Welcome to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. Settle in with a cup of tea, or perhaps something stronger, as we embark on a tale of intrigue and deduction in the grand tradition of Agatha Christie. Today, we're diving into Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, a deadly Poirot story. This is a long, winding mystery designed to keep you guessing for over 90 minutes, so make yourself comfortable. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more classic whodunits. And tell me in the comments below, where are you listening from? Is it a cozy armchair in London, or perhaps a train rattling through the countryside? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Citrine Cloister. Welcome to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. Pull up a chair, perhaps with a steaming cup of Earl Grey or a glass of something bolder, and let us step into the fog-laden world of 1920s England. Tonight, we unravel a tale of cunning and shadow. Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, a deadly Poirot story. This is a long, twisting journey, crafted to keep you guessing for over an hour and a half, so settle in. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more classic whodunits. And, dear listeners, tell me in the comments, where are you joining us from? A cozy flat in London, a quiet village, or perhaps a train rattling through the night. Now, let's begin. In the autumn of 1927, the Sussex countryside glowed with the fiery hues of turning leaves, and a sharp chill whispered of winter's approach. Tucked among the rolling hills stood Citrine Cloister, an estate of haunting beauty and faded grandeur. Once a medieval abbey where monks chanted in solemn procession, it had been transformed in the Victorian era into a retreat for the wealthy and eccentric. Its name came from the citrine yellow stones embedded in its ancient cloister walls, which shimmered like captured sunlight. Weekend in the country, but I suspect it is not for the shooting of pheasants. The car drew to a halt before the grand entrance, where ivy clung to weathered stone, and the air carried the faint scent of damp earth. Mr. Graves, the butler, greeted Poirot with a bow so stiff it seemed hewn from the abbey's ancient walls. His face was impassive, his gray eyes unreadable, though Poirot noted the slight tremor in his hand as he took the detective's coat. Behind him hovered Elsie, a young maid with chestnut curls escaping her cap, her wide eyes darting nervously as though expecting a specter to emerge from the shadows. "Welcome to Citrine Cloister, Monsieur Poirot," said Sir Reginald, striding forward with a booming laugh that echoed in the vaulted hall. He was a portly man in his late 50s, his ruddy cheeks framed by mutton-chop whiskers, his tweed suit straining slightly at the seams. "So glad you could join us. We've a splendid group this weekend, thinkers, artists, and just a pinch of scandal to keep things lively." Poirot inclined his head, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "Sir Reginald, it is always a pleasure. But tell me, what is the purpose of this gathering? Your letter, it was urgent." "Oh, nothing too grim, I assure you," Sir Reginald chuckled, though his eyes flickered with unease. "Just a bit of intellectual sparring, some fine wine, and perhaps a chance to show off my latest acquisition, a Sumerian tablet, 3rd millennium BC. Dr. Arden's keen to see it, says it might tie it to his research." At the mention of Dr. Elias Arden, Poirot's interest sharpened. The guest list, as Sir Reginald proudly detailed, was a constellation of personalities, each with their own secrets glinting beneath polished surfaces. Dr. Arden, the central figure of our tragedy, was a physician in his early 40s, renowned for his work in toxicology, but notorious for his caustic wit and ruthless ambition. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, his lean frame always clad in impeccable black, giving him the air of a raven among doves. Arden had a habit of alienating those around. Assistant. Her sharp mind and cool demeanor masked a simmering grievance. Arden had claimed her groundbreaking ideas on neurotoxins as his own, threatening her academic future. Her pale blue eyes seemed to weigh every word spoken in her presence. Colonel Bertram Finch, a retired military man with a weathered face and a bristling mustache, was a friend of Sir Reginald's from their club days. His gruff manner hid a wound from the Great War. Dr. Arden had exposed his reluctance in battle as medical unfitness, a report that had shattered his reputation. And finally, Mrs. Lydia Arden, the doctor's estranged wife, arrived unannounced, her dark eyes blazing with unspoken fury. In her early 40s, she carried herself with the brittle dignity of a woman scorned, her presence an unwelcome surprise. Whispers among the staff suggested she had discovered her husband's infidelity, and her unexpected arrival set tongues wagging. The grand hall, where the guests gathered for aperitifs, was a marvel of Gothic splendor. The citrine stones in the walls caught the chandelier's light, casting a warm, almost otherworldly glow across the tapestries and polished oak. Poirot sipped a glass of vermouth, his eyes darting from face to face. Lady Beatrice's smile was too tight, Victor's laugh too forced. Miss Voss clutched her glass with white knuckles, while Colonel Finch muttered to himself in a corner. Mrs. Arden stood apart, her gaze fixed on her husband with a mixture of longing and loathing. Dinner was a lavish affair: roast pheasant, buttered asparagus, and a claret that glowed like rubies in the candlelight. Dr. Arden held court, his voice sharp and commanding as he spoke of his latest discovery, a toxin derived from rare Amazonian plants, capable of inducing paralysis so subtle it mimicked natural death. "Imagine," he said, leaning forward, his eyes glinting with pride, "a poison that could strike a man in his locked study, leaving no trace. A perfect crime, undetectable save by the most brilliant mind." The table fell silent, forks pausing mid-air. Poirot's mustache quivered slightly, his mind gladly see him gone, but murder? Surely not here. Poirot smiled enigmatically. In the heart of every gathering there is a shadow, and where there is shadow there is often crime. As the clock chimed 10, the cloister's ancient stone seemed to hum with secrets, and the stage was set for a tragedy that would test even Poirot's formidable intellect. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Cloister. Welcome back to Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm Elias Thorne. If you're just joining us, we're deep in the heart of a chilling Agatha Christie-style tale. Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister. Last time we met our cast of suspects in the grand Sussex estate, where Hercule Poirot sensed trouble brewing. Tonight, the plot thickens as a scream pierces the night. If you're enjoying this journey, smash that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Where are you listening from? A foggy seaside town, or perhaps curled up by a fire? Let's dive into the shadows. The night of October 1927 cloaked Citrine Cloister in a velvet darkness, broken only by the flicker of gas lamps along its ancient corridors. The estate, with its Gothic arches and weathered stone, seemed to hold its breath, as if the ghosts of its monastic past lingered in the alcoves. The guests, having dined on pheasant and claret, had retired to the library, where the fire cast dancing shadows on shelves laden with dusty tomes. The stained glass windows depicting saints with solemn eyes glowed faintly under the moon's gaze, adding an air of solemnity to the evening's revelry. Hercule Poirot, ever watchful, sat in a high-backed chair, his small glass of tisane untouched. His sharp eyes flitted between the guests, noting the undercurrents of tension that rippled beneath their polite chatter. Lady Beatrice Hargrove, elegant in emerald silk, toyed with a pearl necklace, her smile brittle. Victor Langston, the young artist, sketched absently in a notebook, his jaw tight. Miss Clara Voss, the German heiress, read Schiller in a corner, her lips moving silently as if reciting a mantra. No intruder. Sir Reginald had boasted of the room's impregnability, its walls free of secret passages, as confirmed by the estate's ancient blueprints. No way in or out, Poirot, he had said over brandy. Arden chose it for his experiments, says it's safer than a bank vault. As the library clock chimed midnight, its deep toll reverberating through the stone halls, a scream shattered the quiet. It was Elsie, the young maid, her tray of nightcaps clattering to the floor. Her face was ashen as she stumbled into the library, gasping, "Dr. Arden, he's dead. In his study. I saw him through the keyhole." The guests surged to their feet, a cacophony of gasps and questions. Sir Reginald, his face flushed, led the charge to the east wing, Poirot close behind, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. The corridor to the study was dim, lit only by flickering sconces, the air thick with the scent of old stone and wax. The oak door loomed ahead, its surface unmarred, the bolt visibly engaged from within. Elsie, trembling, pointed to the keyhole. I looked in to leave his tea. He slumped over his desk, not moving. Poirot knelt, his eye to the keyhole. In the faint glow of a desk lamp, Dr. Arden's form was unmistakable. Slumped forward, his dark hair falling over his face, one hand clutching a small glass vial. A leather-bound notebook lay open beside him, its pages scrawled with chemical formulas. The room was still, save for a faint, acrid scent, like bitter almonds, that hung in the air. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, rising. "This is no natural death. We must enter vite." Sir Reginald called for Mr. Graves, the butler, who produced a ring of keys with a grimace. "The door's bolted from inside, sir. We'll have to break it down." With the aid of Colonel Finch's burly shoulder, the oak groaned and splintered, revealing the study in all its somber glory. The room was a blend of science and sanctity. Shelves of medical texts seemed genuine, but Poirot noted her quick glance at Victor Langston, who stood pale and silent. Victor shifted uncomfortably. "I was in the garden, smoking. I saw nothing." His fingers twitched, as if longing for his sketchbook. Lady Beatrice, her composure strained, said, "I was in my room, battling a migraine. I heard nothing until the scream." Colonel Finch, his mustache bristling, growled, "I was in the billiard room with Reginald. We were together, mostly." His hesitation hung in the air. Miss Voss, her voice steady but cold, said, "I remained in the library, reading. I had no reason to visit Dr. Arden." Sir Reginald wrung his hands. "This is madness. That study was locked tight. No one could get in." Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Order and method, mes amis. We shall summon the constable, but first the scene must be preserved. Observe. The door was bolted, the windows barred, the chimney impassable. Yet death has entered. This is the locked room, the impossible crime." He circled the desk, his eyes scanning every detail. A faint scratch marked the desk's edge, barely visible. A single cigarette butt lay in the ash of the incense burner, its brand unfamiliar. The notebook's page was torn at the corner, as if ripped in haste. And that bitter almond scent, cyanide perhaps, or something more exotic. Suspicion fell like a fog over the group. Mrs. Arden's alibi was vague. She claimed to have been writing letters, but no paper was found. Victor's garden stroll lacked witnesses. Lady Beatrice's migraine seemed convenient. Colonel Finch admitted to stepping outside for air during his billiard game. Miss Voss's reading was solitary, unverifiable. Even the staff, Graves and Elsie, had been in the halls, their movements unaccounted for in the crucial moments. As dawn crept over the Sussex hills, painting the cloister's stones in shades of gray, Poirot stood alone in the study, his mind alight with questions. A poison, a locked room, and a house full of motives, he mused. The Sussex hills, casting pale light through the Gothic arches of Citrine Cloister. The estate, with its ancient stones and sprawling gardens, seemed to hold its secrets tighter under the dawn's scrutiny. In the drawing room, a cavernous space adorned with velvet drapes and portraits of stern Hargrove ancestors, Hercule Poirot stood before the assembled guests. His polished shoes gleamed, his mustache was immaculate, and his eyes sparkled with the quiet intensity of a man who thrived on unraveling the impossible. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "We are faced with a crime most perplexing. Dr. Arden is dead, poisoned in a room locked from within, with no sign of entry or escape. But fear not. Hercule Poirot shall bring order to this chaos. We proceed with method, with logic, and with truth." The guests sat in uneasy silence, their faces a tapestry of fear, guilt, and suspicion. Sir Reginald Hargrove, red-faced and fidgeting, mopped his brow with a handkerchief. Lady Beatrice, her auburn hair catching the light, maintained a mask of composure, though her fingers twisted a silk scarf. Victor Langston, the artist, slouched in a chair, his sketchbook abandoned, his eyes darting to the door. Miss Clara Voss, the German heiress, sat ramrod straight, her pale hands folded tightly. Colonel Bertram Finch puffed on a pipe, the smoke curling like a question mark. Mrs. Lydia Arden, the widow, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her sobs punctuating the tension. The staff, Mr. Graves, the stoic butler, and Elsie, the trembling maid, hovered at the room's edge, their presence almost spectral. Poirot began his inquiry with Sir Reginald, who led him to the estate's oak-paneled study to review the blueprints. The documents, yellowed with age, confirmed the study's isolation. A single door, bolted, barred windows, a chimney too narrow for a child. Arden chose that room for its security, Sir Reginald said, his voice heavy. He was in the garden, smoking when it happened. I saw nothing. Poirot's eyes narrowed at the mention of smoking. A cigarette butt had been found in the study's incense burner. Coincidence or a clue? Lady Beatrice Hargrove, interviewed in the conservatory amid wilting orchids, spoke with icy precision. Dr. Arden and I had a misunderstanding years ago. He tried to blackmail me over a youthful indiscretion, a letter I wrote in haste. I refused to yield. Her lips tightened. I was in my room with a migraine, taking powders. Ask Elsie, she brought them. Poirot noted her steady gaze, but the powders intrigued him, Could they conceal a toxin? Colonel Finch, puffing his pipe in the billiard room, was gruff. Arden ruined me during the war, called me unfit, a coward in a medical report, cost me my command. He admitted to stepping outside for air during his game with Sir Reginald, leaving a gap in his alibi. But I didn't kill him, he growled. I'm no sneak. Miss Clara Voss, questioned in the library, was composed but guarded. Dr. Arden stole my research on neurotoxins, she said, her German accent crisp. He claimed my work as his own, threatened my career. I could have poisoned him. I know his formulas better than he did. But I was here, reading Schiller, alone. Poirot observed her precise diction, wondering if her calm masked calculation. Returning to the study, Poirot examined the scene with meticulous care. The oak door's bolt was intact, its lock unforced. The barred windows showed no signs of tampering, their grills rusted but secure. The chimney, choked with soot, was impassable. The desk held the empty vial, its bitter almond scent lingering, and the open notebook, its torn corners suggesting a missing page. A new clue emerged. A faint scratch on the floor near the desk, as if something heavy had been dragged. The cigarette butt in the incense burner bore a faint monogram. V.L. Victor Langston? Or a plant? Poirot interviewed the staff next. Beatrice, a past indiscretion. Colonel Finch, a ruined career. Miss Voss, stolen glory. Even the staff are not above suspicion. But the how of this crime, this locked room, eludes us. Whispers erupted. Mrs. Arden pointed at Victor. He's desperate for money, Victor retorted. What about the Colonel's temper? Finch glared at Miss Voss. She knows poisons better than anyone. Voss remained silent, her eyes cold. Poirot raised a hand. Enough. We seek facts, not accusations. The toxin, I suspect, was inhaled, not ingested. Note the vial's emptiness and the scent in the air. But how was it delivered? And why did Dr. Arden, a man so cautious, allow his own poison to be his undoing? The drawing room fell silent, the portraits seeming to judge the living. Outside, the wind moaned through the cloister, as if urging Poirot to uncover the truth. He dismissed the group, his mind alight with fragments. The scratch, the rouge, the cigarette, the key. The puzzle is incomplete, he murmured to himself. But every piece has its place. As the guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the stone halls, Poirot returned to the study, his cane tapping a rhythm of resolve. The locked room held its secrets, but Hercule Poirot was not one to be outwitted by stone or shadow. Chapter 4. Whispers of Deception. Welcome back to Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. We're entangled in the web of death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, where Hercule Poirot faces an impossible crime. A man poisoned in a locked study, with no trace of entry. The shadows of this ancient Sussex estate grow darker, and the clues multiply like whispers in the night. If you're hooked on this tale, do hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more classic whodunits. And please, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? Betrayal. Victor Langston, the young artist, sketched furiously in a corner, his pencil scratching as if to drown out the tension. Miss Clara Voss, her blonde hair pulled tightly back, read a scientific journal, though her fingers betrayed a faint tremble. Colonel Bertram Finch stood by a window, his pipe unlit, staring at the gardens as if they held answers. Poirot began his afternoon's work by revisiting the crime scene. The study, a sanctuary turned tomb. The heavy oak door, now splintered from being forced open, stood ajar, revealing the desk where Dr. Arden had met his end. The empty vial, the open notebook with its torn corner, and the faint almond-like scent lingered as silent witnesses. Poirot's gaze fell on the floor's faint scratch noted earlier. Kneeling, he traced it with a gloved finger, a shallow arc, as if a heavy object had been dragged briefly. "Curieux," he murmured. What was moved, and why? A new clue emerged, a tiny shard of glass, glinting in the rug's fringe near the desk. It was curved, like a fragment of a lens, and bore a faint chemical residue. Poirot pocketed it, his mind turning to Arden's toxicology work. A broken microscope lens, perhaps, or something more sinister. Outside, in the cloister's shadowed arcade, Poirot examined the ground beneath the study's barred windows. A footprint, small and delicate, pressed into the soft earth, too small for a man's boot, perhaps Lady Beatrice's or Mrs. Arden's. Yet both claimed to have stayed indoors. The print was fresh, unmarred by the morning dew, suggesting it was made in the night's final hours. A red herring, or a slip by the killer. Returning indoors, Poirot confronted Victor Langston about the cigarette butt found in the study's incense burner, monogrammed with VL. Victor's face paled. "It's mine, yes, but I didn't leave it there. I smoked in the garden, tossed the stub away. Someone must have taken. Seemed too convenient. A distraction, perhaps." A significant clue surfaced when Poirot examined the study's air vent, a narrow grate above the desk. A faint, powdery residue clung to its edges, and a chemical test, conducted with a portable kit from his valise, confirmed traces of Arden's Amazonian toxin. The vent led to the cloister's outer walkway, accessible to anyone in the house. The poison was inhaled, Poirot mused aloud to Sir Reginald, who had joined him. Not ingested, but delivered through the air. A clever method. But how was it triggered? Sir Reginald, visibly shaken, stammered, "The vent's too small for a person, Poirot. And Arden was alone, bolted in." "Alone, oui," Poirot replied, "but not unwatched. Someone knew his habits, his pride in that toxin." Tensions flared as the guests began accusing each other. In the dining room, Mrs. Arden pointed a trembling finger at Miss Voss. "She knew his poisons. She hated him for stealing her work." Voss retorted coolly, "And you, madam, had reason enough. His affairs, his cruelty. Where were your letters last night?" Victor jumped in, deflecting suspicion. "What about the colonel? He's got a temper like a grenade." Finch slammed his fist on the table, rattling the china. "Watch your tongue, boy, or you'll regret it." Poirot intervened, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. Accusations without evidence are but noise. We seek the truth, and it lies in the details." Another red herring emerged, a maid's apron stained with a dark liquid found in the laundry. Elsie swore it was hers, stained with wine from a spilled tray. But the timing was suspect. She had been near the study at midnight. Poirot tested the stain. It was indeed wine, but the apron's presence in the laundry so soon after the crime raised questions. A subtle clue deepened the mystery. A faint ticking sound, barely audible, emanated from the study's bookcase. Poirot traced it to a hidden compartment behind Thorn. We're immersed in the shadowy depths of Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, where Hercule Poirot grapples with an impossible murder in a locked study. Clues and accusations swirl like leaves in a storm, and tonight, the mystery takes a darker turn. If you're captivated by this tale, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more classic whodunits. And do tell me in the comments, where are you joining us from? A candlelit study in London? Or perhaps a windswept cottage by the sea? Let's venture deeper into the intrigue. By the late afternoon of October 1927, Citrine Cloister stood under a sky bruised with storm clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. The estate's ancient walls, weathered by centuries, seemed to lean inward, as if guarding their secrets from the gathering tempest. Hercule Poirot, his neat figure undeterred by the looming storm, moved through the house with a quiet intensity, his mind piecing together the fragments of Dr. Elias Arden's murder. The locked study, the inhaled toxin, the scattered clues, each whispered of a killer both bold and cunning. But as the day waned, new complications arose, twisting the investigation like a maze with no end. Poirot began in the cloister's arched walkway, where the air was cool and damp, the stone floor slick underfoot. The footprint he had found beneath the study's window nagged at him, a small, delicate mark, suggesting a woman's shoe. He knelt, examining it again, noting its shallow depth. "Too perfect," he murmured, brushing dirt from his gloves. As if placed to be found. Was it a red herring, meant to implicate Lady Beatrice or Mrs. Arden? Or had the killer misstepped in the dark? Inside, the household was unraveling. The guests, confined by the impending storm, gathered in the drawing room, their nerves frayed like old rope. Sir Reginald Hargrove, his face etched with worry, poured himself a brandy, muttering about the estate's reputation. Lady Beatrice, her elegance strained, rearranged a vase of roses with obsessive precision. Victor left impossible crime. But Sir Reginald's blueprints had been clear. No such route existed. Still, he resolved to investigate. In the study, Poirot tapped the walls, his cane striking the stone with rhythmic precision. The panels echoed solidly, no hollows betraying a hidden door. But behind a tapestry depicting a medieval saint, he found a loose stone, not citrine, but plain granite, out of place among the abbey's ornate design. Prying it free, he uncovered a small cavity containing 3 glass vials, each labeled with chemical symbols matching Arden's toxin. "Mon Dieu," Poirot breathed. "The killer used Arden's own poison, stored here for convenience or deception." But who had access to this cache? A twist emerged during a tense luncheon in the dining hall, where the clink of cutlery was drowned by raised voices. Elsie, serving soup, let slip that she had overheard a heated argument between Dr. Arden and Sir Reginald the previous evening before dinner. "It was about money, sir," she stammered to Poirot, blushing under the guests' glares. Dr. Arden said Sir Reginald owed him for some old debt, and Sir Reginald shouted back. Sir Reginald, flushing, admitted the quarrel but insisted it was trivial, a disagreement over an investment in Arden's research. He was demanding more funds, he said. I refused, that's all. Poirot noted the baronet's unease. A financial motive or a distraction? Another complication arose when Poirot questioned Lady Beatrice privately in the conservatory, where the air was thick with the scent of damp earth. Pressed about the lavender-scented letter found in the library, she confessed it was hers, written years ago during a brief affair with Arden. He kept it to torment me, she said, her voice trembling. But I didn't kill him. I burned the original. Someone must have forged a copy. Her admission added a layer of intrigue. Was the letter a plant to frame her, or proof of deeper guilt? A startling twist came from the colonel's volatile temper. The air crackled with distrust, and Poirot sensed the killer exploiting the chaos. A new clue surfaced in the cloister's arcade, where Poirot noticed a faint trail of mud leading from the study's window to a nearby alcove. Hidden behind a statue of St. Augustine was a small leather pouch containing a syringe, its needle coated with a dried residue matching the toxin's scent. A method of delivery? Poirot mused. The syringe suggested precision, but its placement in the alcove, accessible to all, muddied the waters. Was it the killer's tool, or another false lead? A final red herring emerged when Mr. Graves, the butler, reported a missing candlestick from the dining room, later found in Mrs. Arden's luggage. She protested, "I've never seen it. Someone's trying to make me look guilty." The candlestick was heavy enough to be a weapon, but no blunt trauma marked Arden's body. Poirot pocketed the clue, suspecting it was meant to mislead. As night closed in, the storm's fury mirrored the household's unrest. Poirot stood in the study, the rain's rhythm against the windows a counterpoint to his thoughts. The vials, the will, the syringe, the mud trail. Each piece of the puzzle hinted at a killer who knew the estate intimately, who turned Arden's own arrogance against him. "The locked room is a lie," Poirot whispered, his eyes narrowing. "The truth hides in plain sight." The guests retired, their shadows flickering in the candlelight, each carrying secrets heavier than the rain. Poirot remained, his mind a storm of its own, determined to unravel the myth of the hidden passage and the truth of Dr. Arden's death. Okay, back to Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. We're deep in the heart of Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, where Hercule Poirot wrestles with a locked room murder that defies logic. Aligning, and the fog of deception was beginning to lift. In the drawing room, where a fire sputtered against the damp chill, the guests sat in a tense semicircle. Sir Reginald Hargrove, his brandy glass empty, stared into the flames, his joviality a distant memory. Lady Beatrice, her emerald shawl drawn tight, avoided the gazes of her fellow suspects. Victor Langston, his artist's hands stained with ink, clutched a tumbler of whiskey, his eyes restless. Miss Clara Voss, her composure like polished steel, folded her hands with deliberate calm. Colonel Bertram Finch, his pipe cold, muttered about the indignity of suspicion. Mrs. Lydia Arden, her mourning veil askew, wept softly, though her tears seemed rehearsed. The staff, Mr. Graves the butler and Elsie the maid, lingered at the room's edges, their presence heavy with unspoken knowledge. Poirot stood before the hearth, his small frame commanding attention. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady as the rain's rhythm, "the murder of Dr. Arden is no longer a mystery without form. The toxin was inhaled, delivered through the air vent, likely by a device both simple and ingenious. But the who and the why, these we must now uncover." He revealed a critical discovery. The brass clock found in the study's hidden compartment, stopped at 11:45 p.m., was no ordinary timepiece. Examining it closely, Poirot had found a tiny mechanism, a spring-loaded valve designed to release a substance when triggered. This clock, he said, holding it aloft, was rigged to disperse the toxin through the vent, activated while Dr. Arden worked, alone and unsuspecting. The killer needed only to set it and leave. Gasps rippled through the room. Sir Reginald sputtered. "But who could have placed it? The study was locked." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The locked room. It is a lie. The killer entered not the study, but the adjacent cloister, where the vent's other end lies. A twist complicated. No stationery, no ink. Only the suspicious candlestick, now confirmed as a plant. Madame," he said gently, "your grief is real, but your story is not. What did you do in those crucial moments?" She sobbed. "I wandered the halls, too upset to sleep. I didn't go near the study." Her vagueness deepened suspicion. Victor Langston's alibi faltered when Poirot revealed a second cigarette butt, identical to the one in the study, found in the cloister's alcove near the vent. "You smoked in the garden, oui," Poirot said. "But also near the vent, perhaps? Or did someone use your cigarettes to point to you?" Victor's eyes widened. "I swear I didn't go there. Someone's framing me." His panic suggested truth, or a skilled performance. Miss Clara Voss faced scrutiny over the syringe found in the alcove. "You have the knowledge, mademoiselle," Poirot said, "to prepare such a device. The syringe could have injected the toxin into the vent's mechanism." Voss's lips thinned. "I could have, but I didn't. My expertise is my curse, not my crime." Her calm was unnerving, and Poirot wondered if it masked guilt. Lady Beatrice's lavender-scented letter was revisited. Poirot produced a chemical analysis conducted with his portable kit, showing traces of ink from the library's writing desk, recently used. "Someone forged this letter to implicate you, madame," he said. "Or did you write it to cover your tracks?" She paled. "I told you, it's a copy. I destroyed the original years ago." Her distress seemed genuine, but Poirot reserved judgment. A new clue emerged, a faint burn mark on the study's desk, barely visible beneath a stack of papers. It suggested a small flame, perhaps used to activate the toxin's dispersal. Poirot recalled the incense burner, which had held Victor's cigarette butt. Was accusing fingers. The guests, their alibis fraying, eyed each other with growing paranoia. Poirot gathered them in the library, where the fire's glow cast eerie shadows on the saints' stained-glass faces. "The killer is among us," he said, his voice a calm anchor in the chaos. "They used Dr. Arden's own toxin, his own study, against him. But their cleverness betrays them. The truth is near." A red herring surfaced, a glove monogrammed with BF, found in the cloister's alcove, pointed to Colonel Finch. He roared, "It's mine, but I lost it days ago. This is a setup." Poirot pocketed the glove, suspecting another plant. The revelation of the clock's mechanism clarified the method, but the killer's identity remained elusive. Poirot's mind churned. The burn mark, the shadow, the forged letter, the syringe. Each thread was pulling him closer, yet the knot remained untied. "The killer knows this house," he whispered, "and they know their victims' weaknesses." As the guests dispersed, their footsteps swallowed by the storm's roar, Poirot stood alone in the library, the rain's cadence a mirror to his thoughts. The locked room was no longer impregnable. The truth was emerging, thread by thread. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. Welcome back to Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. We're ensnared in the twisting coils of Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, where Hercule Poirot unravels a locked-room murder amid a storm that mirrors the turmoil within. The threads of truth are tightening, but danger lurks closer than ever. If you're gripped by this tale, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more classic whodunits. And do tell me in the comments, where are you joining us from? A fog-shrouded townhouse, or perhaps a quiet cabin with the rain tapping at your window? Let's brace for the storm. As night deepened on October 1927, Citrine Cloister stood battered by a tempest that rattled its ancient windows and howled. Langston, his artist's eyes hollow, sketched aimlessly on a napkin, his fingers smudged with charcoal. Miss Clara Voss, her composure a fragile mask, sat with a scientific journal, though her eyes barely scanned the pages. Colonel Bertram Finch, his pipe unlit, stared into the fire, his jaw tight. Mrs. Lydia Arden, her mourning veil discarded, twisted a ring on her finger, her sobs replaced by a steely silence. Mr. Graves and Elsie, the staff, hovered at the room's edge, their silence heavy with unspoken thoughts. Poirot's investigation took a dangerous turn at dusk. When a second scream pierced the house, Elsie, pale and trembling, stumbled into the drawing room, clutching a silver tray. "Poison, sir," she gasped, pointing to a box of chocolates on a side table. "I found them in my room, meant for Monsieur Poirot." The chocolates, dusted with sugar, bore the same bitter almond scent as the toxin that killed Arden. Poirot, his mustache twitching, examined the box. A single piece was missing, and a quick test with his chemical kit confirmed the presence of the Amazonian poison. "Mon Dieu," he said softly. "The killer grows bold, seeking to silence Hercule Poirot." Suspicion fell on Lady Beatrice, whose personal chocolate supply, kept in her room, was identical to the poisoned box. "I didn't send them," she protested, her voice sharp. "Anyone could have taken them from my vanity." Poirot noted her panic, but also the ease with which her chocolates could be accessed. Too convenient, perhaps, for a frame-up. A new clue emerged in the study, where Poirot returned to re-examine the desk's burn mark. Under closer inspection, he found a tiny fragment of waxed paper, scorched at the edges, tucked beneath a blotter. It suggested a fuse, perhaps used to ignite the toxin's dispersal in the clock's mechanism. A slow burn, Poirot mused, to delay the poison's release, giving the killer time to vanish. The paper bore a faint trace of lavender, Lady Beatrice's perfume again. Medical text. It detailed payments from Sir Reginald to Arden, not for investments, but for services rendered. Vague and suspicious. When confronted, Sir Reginald admitted, "Arden was blackmailing me, yes, over a business deal gone sour. But I didn't kill him. I paid to keep him quiet." The ledger suggested a deeper motive, but also muddied the waters. Did Sir Reginald act to end the extortion? Another clue surfaced in the cloister's alcove, where Poirot found a single pearl, small and lustrous, matching those on Lady Beatrice's necklace. "You were here, madame," Poirot said, presenting it to her. She gasped. "I lost a pearl days ago. It's not proof of anything." Yet the pearl's placement near the vent's access point was damning, unless it was another plant. A red herring complicated matters. A blood-stained handkerchief, monogrammed CF, was found in Colonel Finch's coat pocket during a search of the guest rooms. Finch roared, "It's from a nosebleed, nothing more. Someone's trying to pin this on me." Poirot tested the stain. Indeed blood, but too fresh for the night of the murder. Another distraction, designed to waste time. The storm's crescendo mirrored the household's paranoia, and Poirot sensed the killer's desperation. A new twist emerged when Elsie, trembling, reported seeing a glint of metal in the cloister at dusk, near the statue of St. Augustine. Poirot investigated, finding a tiny key, rusted and old, hidden in the statue's base. It matched none of the estate's locks, but its presence suggested a forgotten mechanism, perhaps tied to the mythical secret passage. "A key to nowhere," Poirot murmured. "Or to everything." Mr. Graves, questioned again, revealed a reluctant truth. Arden had once threatened to expose a youthful indiscretion, a theft from a previous employer. "He held it over me," Graves admitted, his voice low. "But I'd never kill for it. My loyalty is to Sir Reginald." Poirot noted the butler's steady gaze, but wondered if loyalty could mask murder. As midnight approached, Poirot and justice will break with it. As the house fell silent, save for the rain's relentless drum, Poirot stood alone, the weight of the mystery pressing against him. The killer was close, their desperation a beacon. The truth was no longer a shadow, it was a flame, growing brighter. Chapter 8. Midnight Confessions. Welcome back to Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. We're plunging deeper into the shadows of Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, where Hercule Poirot battles a locked-room murder and a killer who dares to strike at him. The storm rages on, and the truth is emerging like a specter from the fog. If you're captivated by this twisting tale, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more classic whodunits. And do tell me in the comments, where are you joining us from? A candlelit parlor in York? Or perhaps a train rattling through the night? Let's uncover the confessions that await. The midnight hour of October 1927 cloaked Citrine Cloister in a darkness as thick as its secrets. The storm battered the estate, its wind screaming through the ancient corridors like a chorus of restless spirits. Rain lashed the Gothic windows, and the air carried the sharp tang of ozone and wet stone. Hercule Poirot, his sharp mind a beacon in the gloom, stood in the library, where the fire's dying embers cast flickering shadows on the stained glass saints. The murder of Dr. Elias Arden, poisoned by his own toxin in a locked study, was unraveling, but the killer's desperation was palpable. The poisoned chocolates meant for Poirot had raised the stakes, and now, every whisper in the house felt like a confession waiting to break. Poirot's investigation had narrowed the method. A rigged clock, a syringe, a fuse in the air vent, tools of a meticulous killer. But the who remained elusive, hidden, among a cast of suspects with motives as tangled as the ivy outside. The guests, confined by the storm, were fraying under the weight of suspicion. Her hang it in the hall. Confronted, Voss's eyes flashed. "My coat was in my room all night," she said sharply. "Someone took it to frame me." Her denial was firm, but Poirot wondered. Was she a victim of deceit, or its architect? A dramatic twist unfolded at midnight when Poirot overheard a whispered conversation in the library's alcove. Victor Langston and Miss Voss stood close, their voices low but urgent. "We can't stay here," Victor hissed. "They'll pin it on us." Voss replied, "Keep quiet, or we're done for." Poirot stepped forward, his cane tapping the floor. "Planning an escape, perhaps?" he asked, his voice deceptively mild. Victor stammered. "We were just talking about leaving after the storm." Voss nodded, her face pale. "We're innocent, monsieur. We fear being blamed." Their words suggested a lover's pact, but Poirot suspected a deeper alliance or a clever act. A red herring complicated matters. A pocket watch engraved with EA was found in the drawing room, its hand stopped at 11:45 p.m., matching the rigged clock in the study. Mrs. Arden gasped. "It's Elias's. He always carried it." But Poirot noted the watch's pristine condition, no wear, no scratches, as if newly placed. "It planned," he murmured, "to make us believe Arden tampered with his own death." The watch's timing was too perfect. Another distraction to muddy the truth. Poirot returned to the study where a fresh clue emerged. A faint smudge of charcoal on the vent's grate, invisible in daylight but glowing faintly under his pocket torch. It matched the charcoal on Victor's hands, a residue from his sketching. "You were near the vent, Monsieur Langston," Poirot said, confronting him. Victor's face crumpled. "I was in the cloister, yes, sketching the arches before the storm. But I didn't touch the vent." His story was plausible, but the charcoal was damning, or deliberate sparks. In the dining room, Colonel Finch accused Victor and Voss of conspiring, citing their whispered meeting. "They're in it together," he growled. Voss shot back. "And your glove in the cloister, Colonel? Explain that." Mrs. Arden pointed at Sir Reginald. He owed Elias money. Blackmail money. He had every reason to kill him. Sir Reginald, pale, denied it, but his trembling hands betrayed fear. Poirot intervened, his voice a calm anchor. "Enough, mes amis. The killer weaves a web of lies, but each lie reveals their hand. The charcoal, the silk, the watch. These are threads, and I shall follow them." A final clue emerged. A faint hum, barely audible, came from the study's bookcase. Poirot traced it to a hidden panel, revealing a small bellows device rigged to pump air through the vent. It bore traces of the toxin and a fingerprint, too smudged to identify, but proof of the killer's ingenuity. "The bellows," Poirot said to Sir Reginald, who had joined him, "delivered the poison with precision. The killer needed only minutes to set it." A red herring surfaced. A torn sketch found in Victor's room depicted the study's vent with uncanny detail. Victor swore, "I drew it days ago, for art, not murder." The sketch's accuracy suggested intimate knowledge, or another attempt to frame him. As the clock struck 1, Poirot gathered the guests in the library, the storm's roar a backdrop to his words. "The killer is desperate," he said, his eyes piercing each face. "They plant clues to confuse, but they cannot hide forever. The bellows, the letter, the confessions. These are the cracks in their facade." The guests dispersed, their shadows long and wavering. Poirot remained, his mind alight with connections. The silk, the charcoal, the bellows, the letter. The killer was close, their desperation a pulse in the dark. "The truth is near," he whispered, "and midnight will not hide it." Chapter 9. The final crucible of logic stood in the Cloister's arcade, where the morning light cast long slanted beams through the Gothic arches. The locked room mystery, Arden poisoned by his own toxin through a rigged vent, was nearly solved. The bellows device, the charred fuse, the silk scrap, all pointed to a killer who thrived on precision and deception. But one final piece was needed to name the culprit. The guests, worn by sleeplessness and suspicion, gathered in the drawing room, their faces pale in the gray light. Sir Reginald Hargrove, his hands unsteady, clutched a cold teacup, his eyes haunted. Lady Beatrice, her auburn hair disheveled, sat rigid, her shawl slipping from her shoulders. Victor Langston, his artist's fingers smudged with ink, avoided eye contact, his sketchbook abandoned. Miss Clara Voss, her composure fraying, gripped a pencil as if it were a lifeline. Colonel Bertram Finch, his mustache drooping, polished his pipe with obsessive care. Mrs. Lydia Arden, her mourning veil replaced by a steely gaze, twisted a handkerchief into knots. Mr. Graves and Elsie, the staff, stood silently, their presence like ghosts in the morning haze. Poirot began the day's investigation in the study, where the scene of Arden's death remained untouched. The desk, the empty vial, the open notebook, each was a silent witness. His attention returned to the air vent where the bellows device had been hidden. Examining it again, he noticed a tiny brass pin, barely visible, lodged in the vent's grill. It was etched with a faint symbol, a stylized V, reminiscent of Miss Voss's monogrammed stationery. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, pocketing the pin. Was it a careless mistake, or another planted clue? A critical clue emerged in the cloister's alcove, where Poirot re-examined the loose flagstone. Beneath it, he found a small, hollowed-out stone. Not granite, but a cunning replica of the her research. When shown the note, Voss paled. "He was paranoid," she said. "He thought I'd expose his theft, but I never wrote this." Was the note genuine, or a forgery to frame her? Another clue surfaced in the dining room, where Poirot found a smudged fingerprint on a wine glass used the night of the murder. It matched none of the guests' prints, taken discreetly during earlier interviews, but bore a faint chemical residue. Arden's toxin. The killer wore gloves, Poirot mused to Sir Reginald, who hovered nervously, but left a trace on this glass, perhaps in haste. The fingerprints' ambiguity suggested an outsider, or a servant like Graves or Elsie. A red herring complicated matters. A locket engraved with L.A. was found in Mrs. Arden's handbag, containing a photograph of a young man, not her husband, but a stranger. Mrs. Arden, confronted, wept. "It's my brother's, lost years ago. I don't know how it got there." The locket's presence suggested a hidden lover, fueling suspicion of her motives, but its pristine condition hinted at another plant. Tensions erupted in the drawing room, where the guests' accusations reached a fever pitch. Victor accused Colonel Finch of planting the locket to deflect suspicion. "You're always skulking about," he shouted. Finch retorted, "And your sketches of the vent, boy? You knew too much." Miss Voss pointed at Lady Beatrice. "Her pearls, her letters, she's hiding something." Lady Beatrice snapped, "You're the poison expert, Clara." Sir Reginald, desperate, pleaded for calm, but his voice shook. Poirot intervened, his voice a quiet thunder. "Enough, mes amis. The killer sows discord to hide their tracks, but the truth emerges. The tube, the note, the fingerprint. These are not accidents, but signatures." A dramatic twist unfolded when Poirot re-examined the cloister's hollow stone. Inside, he found a tiny scrap of paper with a chemical formula. Not Arden's toxin, but a paralytic agent used in surgical anesthesia. The brass pin, the coded note, the chemical formula. These are the final pieces, and they point to one truth. A final clue emerged. A faint whistle, heard only in the cloister's silence, led Poirot to a hidden crevice in the arcade's wall. Inside was a small bellows pump, identical to the one in the study, but rigged with a timer set to midnight. It confirmed the toxin's delivery. A dual system, one pump in the study, another in the cloister, ensuring the poison's spread. The craftsmanship was exquisite, pointing to someone with scientific precision. Voss? Or someone framing her? The guests watched Poirot, their breaths held as he paced. "The killer knew Dr. Arden's habits," he said. "His pride, his isolation. They turned his own tools against him, but their cleverness betrays them." The room was silent, save for the drip of rain outside as the truth loomed closer than ever. Chapter 10. The Denouement. Welcome, P. Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. We've reached the final act of Death of Dr. Arden in Citrine Cloister, where Hercule Poirot stands poised to unmask a killer who wove a web of deception within these ancient Sussex walls. The storm has passed, but the truth shines brighter than ever. If you've been gripped by this tale, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more classic whodunits. And do tell me in the comments, where are you joining us from? A sun-dappled garden? Or perhaps a cozy armchair with a cup of tea? Let's unveil the truth together. As the morning of October 1927 broke over Citrine Cloister, the estate emerged from the storm's embrace, its stone arches glistening under a tentative sun. The air carried the fresh scent of rain-soaked earth, a stark contrast to the heavy secrets that had burdened the house. Hercule Poirot, his mustache immaculate and his eyes alight with certainty, gathered the guests in the grand hall, where the Gothic vaulted ceiling loomed like a silent judge. "The murder of Dr. Elias Arden, ami," he began. his voice a calm beacon in the tense air. The murder of Dr. Arden was a crime of brilliance, designed to defy logic. A locked room, a poison delivered through a vent, a killer who hid behind false clues. But Hercule Poirot sees what others do not. The truth is now clear. He began with the method, unraveling the intricate mechanism. The toxin was inhaled, released by a glass tube hidden in the cloister's hollow stone, activated by a bellows pump and a timed fuse. The clock, stopped at 11:45, was the trigger, dispersing the poison through the vent while Dr. Arden worked, alone and unsuspecting. The bellows in the study ensured the toxin spread, a dual system of deadly precision. The guests gasped, but Poirot raised a hand. The clues pointed to many. The cigarette butt with Monsieur Langston's initials, the lavender-scented letter implicating Lady Beatrice, the war medal of Colonel Finch, the locket in Madame Arden's bag. These were red herrings, planted to confuse. The torn notebook page, the stopped watch, the stained apron. All distractions, meant to obscure the truth. He turned to the critical clues. The brass pin with a V in the vent. The silk scrap from Mademoiselle Voss's coat. The chemical formula for a paralytic. These were not accidents. The coded note, "CV seeks my ruin," seemed to accuse Mademoiselle Voss. But it was a forgery, written in ink from the library's desk. The fingerprint on the wine glass, smudged and untraceable, suggested gloves. The charcoal smudge, the pearl, the rusted key, all pointed to a killer who knew the house intimately. Poirot's gaze swept the room. Let us consider the motives. Madame Arden, betrayed by her husband's affairs and greed. Monsieur Langston, denied his inheritance. Lady Beatrice, blackmailed over a past indiscretion. Colonel Finch, humiliated by a wartime report. Monsieur Graves, threatened with exposure. Perfect its design. Your sketch, found later, was no mere art. He turned to the red herrings. The cigarette butt was taken from Monsieur Langston's garden pile, placed to implicate him. The letter, forged in Lady Beatrice's style, used her perfume to mislead. The locket, the glove, the medal, all were scattered to sow chaos. The poisoned chocolates, meant for me, were your desperate act when I grew too close. Voss stood, her voice icy. Why would I risk so much? Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. Dr. Arden stole your research, your future. He claimed your work on neurotoxins, threatening to sell it and leave you in ruin. The coded note was your warning to him, rewritten to frame you as a victim. You knew his habits, his late nights, his locked study. You used the cloister's alcove, accessible to all, to set your trap, entering at 11:30 while others quarreled or slept. The room was silent, save for the faint drip of rainwater outside. Voss's composure cracked, her hands trembling. He deserved it, she whispered. He took everything, my work, my pride. I only took back what was mine. Poirot nodded. Justice will judge you, mademoiselle. The constable arrives soon. Sir Reginald, stunned, called for Graves to summon the authorities. The guests, their faces a mix of relief and horror, watched as Voss was escorted to her room under guard. Mrs. Arden wept. Victor exhaled. Lady Beatrice sank into her chair, and Finch muttered an apology to Poirot. The storm had broken, and so had the killer's mask. As the sun climbed higher, Poirot stood alone in the cloister, the light catching the ancient stones. "The truth," he murmured, "is a light that no shadow can hide." Prepared to depart Citrine Cloister, his work complete.